I always thought I truly knew the woman I'd been married to for 12 years, until I caught her sharing a laugh with another man at the cafe she loved most. I didn't yell or make a scene. I left her a short note instead: "Don't come home." What she did after that destroyed the last bit of respect I had for her. But she had no idea what kind of man she was dealing with. I'm not the type to crumble. I design buildings that scrape the sky, and when someone betrays me, I don't fall apart. I bring the whole thing down. And when it was over, both of their lives would be in pieces, while I stood firm. Name's Miles Harper. I'm 42, a senior architect at Everett and Associates, one of the top firms in Philadelphia. For over a decade, I believe my marriage to Rachel, my wife who works as a professional photographer, was built on something solid. We chose careers over starting a family. While I was out designing signature buildings all over Pennsylvania, she was building her photography studio into something that really earned respect in the art scene. That Wednesday in May started off as one of the best days I'd had in a long time. After a tense 3-hour meeting, where I stood my ground on a museum project the board wanted to compromise, I walked out victorious. They ended up approving my exact design for the Holloway Museum expansion. Even the CEO came over, shook my hand, and said, "This is exactly why we hired you, Harper. You don't cave when you know what's right." Riding high on that win, I decided to do something spontaneous, something thoughtful. I knew I hadn't been the most attentive husband lately, especially with how demanding this project was. So I wanted to make it up to her. I swung by Marcello's to grab her favorite, Anna's pasta, same thing she loved since our honeymoon in Italy, and drove over to her studio in the Arts District. But when I got there, the place was closed up early. Her assistant, Tessa, was there and seemed a little uneasy when she said she went to meet a client at Café Juliana. Then, after a pause, she added, "It's some gallery owner. She's been seeing him quite a bit lately." Something in her voice didn't sit right. It was subtle, but it chilled me. I thanked her and headed toward the cafe, 5 blocks away. With every step I took, my heart beat a little faster. When I walked in and scanned the room, everything tilted. There she was, Rachel, sitting in a corner booth with a man dressed sharp, around my age. But it wasn't just casual. Her fingers were laced with his, resting gently on his arm. She threw her head back and laughed at something he said, leaning in close like they shared some secret. And I knew that laugh. It used to be mine. For a second, I just stood there, frozen. The bag with the lilies was still clutched in my hand. But then years of standing tall on job sites and staring down corporate execs kicked in. I walked over calmly, like a man on a mission. Neither of them noticed me until I was right beside their table, casting a long shadow over their private little moment. Rachel's smile vanished the second our eyes met. "Miles," she gasped, snatching her hand back. "What are you?" The guy, Ethan, I'd learn later, looked more bothered than surprised. Like I'd just interrupted a conference call, not caught them red-handed. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out the notebook I always carried, the same one where I sketched museum wings and city skylines. I wrote 6 sharp words. My writing, neat as an architectural blueprint: "Don't come home. We're done." I placed the note and the lilies on the table, turned around, and walked out. I didn't slump my shoulders. I didn't hesitate. I pushed through the door and kept walking, even when I heard her calling after me. I'd caught my wife in a cafe holding hands with another man. I left her a note telling her not to come back. What happened next would prove I didn't really know her at all. I spent the next few hours just driving through Philadelphia, circling streets I knew by heart. I passed buildings I helped shape: Riverside Square, Hawthorne Tower, the Easton Arts Annex at Mid-Atlantic University. Each one a piece of my life. Each one felt steadier than my own marriage had turned out to be. Eventually, I ended up back at the office and buried myself in work, keeping busy until long after midnight. When I finally made it home, our brownstone was dark. For a moment, I thought maybe she understood what the note meant. But then I saw her car in the driveway. My jaw clenched. Even now, she couldn't honor something as simple as that. I stepped inside and found her sitting in the living room, swirling wine in a glass like she was waiting for a dinner reservation instead of facing the wreckage of our marriage. No tears. No breakdown. Just cool, controlled composure. "We need to talk, Miles," she said calmly, placing her glass down like an actress hitting her mark. I didn't sit. I crossed my arms and asked, "Talk about what? How long you've been sneaking around with the gallery guy? Or how do you think I am?" "It's not what it looked like," she said with a heavy sigh. like I was just another difficult client throwing a fit over a minor design change. Ethan and I are just colleagues. That was a business chat. A bitter chuckle slipped out of me. I've had a lot of business talks, Rachel. None of them involved holding hands or whispering sweet nothings. You're blowing this out of proportion. She stood and walked toward me, moving with that quiet grace she always had behind a camera. It wasn't what you think. You've been distant. Always working. Ethan listens. He values what I do. Oh, and I don't? Even I was surprised at how steady my voice was. Not lately, she replied sharply. Then her tone turned cold. You've been absent for months, Miles. You've barely been here physically or emotionally. What did you expect me to do? You could have talked to me, I said. You could have just told me there was a problem, I said, my voice steady. Not sneak around like I was some roadblock in your schedule. That finally got to her. I saw it, just for a second, a little flinch. A crack in her polished expression. It just happened, she said softly. It's not serious. How long? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't change much. She hesitated, and that pause said more than words. For months, she finally admitted. But it's only been emotional. Nothing physical. I almost laughed. Only emotional. Like that somehow made it less of a betrayal. As if tearing someone's heart out is fine as long as you keep your clothes on. Rachel's face turned cold. I didn't plan this, Miles. I was lonely. Ethan understands me in ways you stopped trying to. So now it's my fault? I stepped in closer, towering over her without meaning to. You cheated because I worked too hard? Because I was out building the life we both agreed on? She didn't answer. Not really. Just looked at me and said something that hit harder than anything else she'd said that night. I'm not sure I want this marriage anymore, Miles. I'm not sure I ever did. She said it with the same tone she used when critiquing one of her prints, measured, detached. But it landed like a wrecking ball. This wasn't some mistake or a moment of weakness. This was her showing me who she really was. Finally. Clearly. Pack your things, I said, my voice low. Tonight. I want you gone by morning. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. I guess she thought I'd beg. That I'd try to salvage something. She didn't know me at all. Where am I supposed to go? She snapped. I don't care, I said, already turning toward the stairs. Call Ethan. I'm sure he's got space. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my home office, staring at blueprints and plans I once cared about. Now they felt meaningless. Around 3:30 a.m., I heard her quietly leave the guest room and slip out the front door. No slamming, just a soft click. Somehow that felt heavier than any fight could have. By sunrise, I was running on caffeine and resolve. I got to the office early, throwing myself into work on the Holloway Museum project. My team noticed something was off, but no one said anything. That's the kind of respect I'd earned over the years, built like the buildings I designed. I was deep in a foundation layout when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Miles Harper. A voice asked, some guy I didn't recognize. Cautious. Hesitant. Speaking. My name's Caleb Brooks. I work at Rachel's studio. I think there's something you should know. My grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. Check your email. I just sent you something. She doesn't know I have these. Then he hung up. I opened my email and saw the message. It had attachments, photos, and one video. I clicked, one by one, hands steady even as my gut twisted. There were photos of Rachel and Ethan, walking into a hotel, hugging in a parking lot, having dinner at places I'd never heard of. The timestamps went back months. Then I played the video, shot from a distance, grainy, but clear enough. The two of them outside his gallery late at night, holding each other, kissing. And then her voice, clear as a bell. Miles will never find out. He's too busy building his precious skyscrapers to notice what's going on right under his nose. Ethan chuckled. The oblivious husband. It's a classic for a reason. I shut the laptop, and instead of rage, I felt calm. A strange kind of stillness. Because now I knew. This wasn't a slip-up or some accidental connection. This was deliberate. This was planned. I called Caleb back. Why are you showing me this? I asked. His voice dropped. Because I was where you are, man. 7 months ago. Different woman, same lies. Nobody told me the truth until it was too late. How long have you known? A while. She's not exactly subtle at the studio. Everyone knows. I'm sorry, man. After we hung up, I sat there in silence, processing. Rachel hadn't just broken our vows. She'd mocked them, mocked me, made me into some kind of inside joke between her, her lover, and even her coworkers. I'd built my entire life on strength and structure. Designs meant to last, meant to endure. I thought our marriage was the same way. I thought wrong. That night, sitting alone in the quiet house we once shared, I made a decision. This wasn't going to break me. I'd been through professional setbacks that would have wrecked lesser architects, clients backing out, budgets slashed in half, entire projects scrapped after months of work. And each time, I didn't just survive, I came back sharper, stronger. This was just another structural failure to assess and rebuild from. Carefully, deliberately, the way I was trained to do. The next morning, I got another message from Caleb. Can we meet? There's more you should know. We agreed on a small coffee shop, far from Rachel's studio. Quiet, low profile. I got there early and picked a corner table with a view of the entrance, an old habit from tough client meetings and tense contractor talks. Always know where the exits are. Caleb showed up right on time. Mid-32s, looked like the kind of guy who handled fragile camera gear for a living, precise, cautious. His handshake was firm, his expression grim. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sitting down across from me. You said there's more, I replied, keeping my voice calm, professional. He scanned the room, then leaned in. Ethan's not just Rachel's affair partner, he said. He's married. His wife, Diana, she's a curator over at the Ellison Museum of Art. That hit harder than I expected. Not just an affair. A double betrayal. 2 marriages tossed aside for what? Some ego boost? A thrill? How do you know this? I asked, my voice low. Caleb's jaw tightened. Because Rachel can't stop bragging to my girlfriend Tessa, she's her assistant, about how clever they've been. Meeting in plain sight. Keeping you and Ethan's wife in the dark. He shook his head. They've got a whole system. Alibis, fake plans, wiped messages. They've been doing this for months. A system. I repeated the word in my mind, ironic, considering I built systems for a living. Foundations. Frameworks. Load-bearing truths. This one was built to deceive. Why are you really telling me this? I asked. You don't even know me. He looked down at his coffee, then back up at me. My ex-wife did the same thing, he said quietly. Cheated. Moved her boyfriend in while I was on a business trip. And the worst part? Half her friends knew. No one told me. He paused, his voice thick. No one deserves that kind of humiliation. For a second, neither of us spoke. Just 2 men sitting in silence, connected by betrayal neither of us asked for. What about Ethan's wife? I asked. Does she know? Caleb shook his head. I don't think so. Rachel says she's clueless. Too busy running museum shows while her husband appreciates other kinds of artwork. He grimaced. Disgusting. Can you get in touch with her? I asked. Through the museum, probably. You thinking of telling her? I met his eyes. Wouldn't you have wanted someone to tell you? He didn't answer with words. Just pulled out his phone and showed me more evidence, screenshots of texts between Rachel and Tessa. Meeting spots. Fake excuses. Jokes about me. She's not who you thought she was, Caleb said gently. And from what Tessa says, they're not slowing down. There's a trip to Washington planned next month. Supposedly for a gallery event, but it's a getaway. Just them. I thanked him. In my mind, I was already sketching out a new set of blueprints. Not for a building this time, but for the quiet, calculated demolition of Rachel's fantasy world. A structure built on lies. As we stood to leave, Caleb added one last thing. For what it's worth, everyone at the studio thinks you got a raw deal. Rachel's talented, sure, but what she's doing, it's not right. I nodded, shook his hand, and walked out with purpose. I had some designs to draw up. Blueprints for truth. And accountability. Later that evening, Rachel texted. Need to pick up more of my things tomorrow. Will you be home? No apology. No shame. Just another item on her to-do list. I'll be home at 6:30. Be quick. I replied. Then I started preparing. I printed every photo, every text, every screenshot Caleb had sent me. Laid them all out across the dining room table. The same table where we'd once celebrated anniversaries and dreamed out loud about our future. I added printouts from Ethan's social media, pictures of him and his wife at events, arm in arm, smiling like nothing was wrong. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I was focused. Clear. At work the next day, I was sharper than I'd been in weeks. My team thought it was dedication to the Holloway project. They didn't know I was working on something much more personal, reconstructing my life from the ground up. At 6 o'clock, I left the office, stopping to grab a bottle of scotch I usually saved for major project milestones. This qualified. When I pulled into the driveway, Rachel's car was already there. I stepped inside and found her in our bedroom, zipping up a suitcase full of designer clothes. She'd used her key. Even after everything, she still let herself in. She really didn't get it. "You're early," she said, not even bothering to look up. "It's my house." She flinched at the tone in my voice, but didn't argue. Just kept packing like this was some quick errand, like she was running late for a meeting, not closing the door on our marriage. "I need to get my jewelry from the safe." "Fine." I watched her move around the room with that same air of quiet confidence, like she still believed she was in control, like this whole mess wasn't her fault. Eventually, she turned to me, her face set in that polished expression she wore when she wanted to steer a conversation. "Miles, I think we should talk about the house. I've put a lot of time into the design, and we'll let the lawyers handle it." I cut in. Then I nodded toward the stairs. "But before you go, there's something I want to show you." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her face. But curiosity won out. It always did. She followed me downstairs to the dining room. The moment she saw the table, she stopped cold. Anyone who's ever worked with visuals, especially a photographer like her, would recognize the story those images told. A timeline of betrayal. Neatly laid out. Dated. Documented. Nothing left to interpretation. "What is this?" Her voice cracked just a little. "Documentation," I said calmly, pouring myself a scotch. "I'm an architect, Rachel. I believe in structure, in evidence, in laying things out clearly." The shock faded from her face and was quickly replaced by something hotter, anger. "You had me followed? You spied on me." I took a sip. "Didn't need to. You were so careless, people around you noticed." One of them decided to speak up. Imagine that. Her eyes moved from photo to photo, lingering on the ones of Ethan and his wife hand in hand at a gallery, laughing at a fundraiser. "This is an invasion of privacy," she hissed. "Those are personal moments." "So was our marriage," I replied quietly, "until you turned it into a game for your assistant and your boyfriend." Her face drained of color. "What are you going to do with all this?" she asked, her voice trembling now. I shrugged. "Haven't decided yet. Thought maybe Diana might want to see what her husband's been up to." "You wouldn't." "Why not? You didn't hesitate to destroy my life. Why should I protect Ethan's?" Her mask slipped in. The calm, composed artist act cracked right down the middle. She wasn't the one in control anymore, and she knew it. "Finish packing," I said quietly, "and leave your key on the counter." She left that night, rattled and defeated. Rachel, the woman who always prided herself on directing the scene, couldn't handle being part of one she didn't write, especially not one framed with the kind of precision I used to design buildings. After she was gone, I poured another scotch. Then I sat down and drafted an email. To Diana Grant. Subject, your husband. "I have some information you deserve to know. Would you be willing to meet?" I attached one photo. Nothing scandalous. Just Rachel and Ethan walking into a hotel together, side by side, smiling. I added my number, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. A man doesn't run from uncomfortable truths. He handles them, directly. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Miles Harper?" a woman's voice asked. Calm, but cautious. "Yes. This is Diana Grant. I got your email." She paused. "I'd like to meet. Today, if you're available." We agreed on a quiet cafe, well off the beaten path, nowhere near the museum or Ethan's gallery. I got there early and claimed a corner table with good sightlines. Old habits. Diana arrived on time. Tall, elegant, with sharp eyes that didn't miss much. She looked composed, but her shoulders were tight, like she was holding something in. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, standing to shake her hand. She nodded. "Your email wasn't exactly subtle, Mr. Harper." "Miles," I corrected her. Subtlety didn't seem helpful. That earned a ghost of a smile. "Fair enough." She sat across from me, folding her hands neatly on the table. "So, you're Rachel's husband." "Soon-to-be ex-husband," I said. She studied me closely. "How long have you known?" "A week. Maybe a little more." I met her eyes. "You." She looked down, then back up. "I've suspected for a while. Ethan's not as discreet as he thinks. Late gallery nights, surprise business trips, suddenly locking his phone." She shook her head slowly. "I'm a curator, Miles. I'm trained to notice when something's out of place." "Then why haven't you confronted him?" "My father was a lawyer. He taught me never go into a confrontation without evidence." I reached into my portfolio and slid a few photos across the table. "Is this enough?" She picked them up one by one, studying each image with the same careful attention she probably gave to art pieces. Her face didn't change, but I saw her grip tighten on the coffee cup. Yes, she said finally. This is more than enough. There's more, I told her. Texts, emails, video. One of Rachel's coworkers gave them to me. Diana raised an eyebrow. Someone with a conscience. Rare these days. My thoughts exactly. She gathered the photos into a neat little stack, her movements as measured and careful as everything else about her. What are you planning to do, Miles? End my marriage with whatever dignity I've got left, I said. Beyond that, I shrugged, still figuring it out. She gave a small nod, thoughtful. What if I told you I had a proposition? I'm listening. They think they're clever, don't they? Her voice sharpened. Like they've been pulling strings behind our backs. Like we're fools. There was steel behind her words now. The curator mask slipping just enough to reveal the woman underneath, intelligent, composed, and absolutely done with being played. I say we show them just how wrong they are. As she laid out her plan, I felt something click. This wasn't just someone reacting to betrayal. This was a fellow builder. Someone who understood structure, long-term thinking, precision, integrity. By the time our coffee was cold, we had an agreement. They underestimated us both, Diana said as she stood. For the first time in days, I felt grounded. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. About holding people accountable for their choices. Diana's plan was beautifully simple. She invited Ethan to lunch at a classy little place near the museum, Café Vino. One of those spots they'd used to celebrate anniversaries. My part? Make sure Rachel found out. Caleb helped with that. He casually mentioned to her that he'd seen me at Café Vino with a tall brunette who didn't look like business. Just like Diana predicted, Rachel's curiosity got the better of her. I saw her come in just as Diana and I were leaning in close, her hand gently resting on mine for emphasis, an intentional echo of what I'd once witnessed between her and Ethan at Café Juliana. Rachel froze. Then she came straight for our table, heels clicking like gunshots across the marble floor, righteous fury written all over her face. Really, Miles, she snapped. This is your response? Jumping into someone else's bed already. I looked up, calm as ever. Rachel, what a surprise. Diana turned smoothly, her voice pleasant and disarming. You must be Rachel. Miles has told me so much about you. Rachel blinked, clearly thrown by how composed she was. And you are. Diana Grant. She extended a hand with the kind of grace that comes from years in front of donors and board members. Curator at the Ellison Museum of Art. And Ethan's wife. That stopped Rachel cold. Color drained from her face. Ethan's wife? Yes, Diana said with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miles and I have been having the most fascinating conversation. About betrayal. About deception. And consequences. Please join us. Rachel stayed on her feet, frozen. Her photographer's instincts, usually so good at capturing the story in a scene, completely failing her. This is an ambush, she said. No, I replied. It's a conversation. One that's been coming for a long time. I'm not doing this here, Rachel said, her voice starting to tremble. That's your choice, Diana said coolly. But Ethan will be here any minute. He thinks I'm meeting with a potential donor. She smiled again, sharp and deliberate. Surprise. Rachel's phone was out before Diana finished speaking, fingers flying across the screen. No doubt trying to warn Ethan. But it was already too late. He showed up moments later, walking through the restaurant entrance like he owned the place. His eyes swept the room, confused at first, then startled. Then completely panicked when he saw who was sitting together at the corner table. What's going on here? He asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Still trying to play the part of the smooth-talking gallery owner. Clarity, Diana said simply. Something long overdue. We know everything, I added. The hotels. The trips. The texts you thought were so clever. Ethan's polished facade cracked. This isn't the place for this. You didn't seem too concerned about this place when you were spending time with my wife, I said, just loud enough for nearby folks to notice. A couple diners looked over, then quickly dropped their eyes. Maybe we should talk in private, Diana suggested, ever the professional. Why? I asked. They didn't keep it private. Half of Rachel's studio knew. College administrators were gossiping. Why should we hide the fallout? Rachel and Ethan exchanged a desperate look. They were only just beginning to understand how badly they'd misread us. How much they'd underestimated what we were willing to do. They thought we were distracted, too focused on work, too trusting to notice. But now they were starting to feel the consequences. Hard in public. The fallout spread fast. Ethan made some excuse about an emergency at the gallery. Rachel suddenly remembered a client meeting she had to get to. Neither lie convinced anyone. They left separately, heads down, nerves rattled. Diana and I? We stayed. Finished our lunch like civilized adults. Talked calmly. Exchanged contact info. Agreed to stay in touch. I knew Rachel's reaction wouldn't take long. And I was right. That evening, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. How dare you ambush me like that? Is this your idea of maturity? You had no right to involve Ethan's wife. I didn't respond. Not a single word. And that silence only made her angrier. The next morning, she showed up at my office, stormed past my assistant like she owned the place. You've gone too far, Miles, she snapped, slamming the door shut behind her. I stayed seated at my desk, eyes on the Holloway project laid out in front of me. Calm. Focused. Unshaken. Have I? I said evenly. Or did I just respond to the choice you made? You're trying to destroy my life. Her voice cracked, the polished, professional tone she reserved for clients nowhere to be found. I finally looked up from my blueprints. No, Rachel. I'm just making sure you face the consequences of your actions. Something, clearly, you never thought would happen. Her bravado faltered. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice dipping into something that sounded like desperation. Nothing, I said simply. That single word seemed to throw her off balance more than anything else. She slowly sank into the chair across from me. Ethan's wife froze their accounts, she muttered. She's filed for divorce. His gallery investors are getting jumpy. Actions, I replied, returning to my drawing, have consequences. Her eyes flicked toward the sketch pad in front of me. The gallery was supposed to feature my work next month. This could ruin my career. I set my pencil down and met her eyes. Then maybe you should have thought about that before things went too far between you two. Before you laughed about it behind my back. Before you turned me into a joke. I watched the shift in her face, anger melting into calculation. I knew that look. I'd seen it during budget arguments and renovation talks. I made a mistake, Miles. A horrible mistake. But does everything we built really have to fall apart over it? The nerve of it almost made me laugh. I could almost admire the guts it took to try that angle. I said. There is no we anymore, Rachel. You ended that the moment you chose Ethan. He broke it off this morning, she said quietly. Said he needed to fix things with his wife. I gave a dry chuckle. And now you're back to your second choice? That's not how this works. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said, picking my pencil back up. Over and over. She sat there for another moment, like she was waiting for something. Some crack in the wall. I didn't give her one. My lawyer will reach out about the divorce. And you'll need to find a new gallery. She left without another word. A little while later, I got a text from Diana. Ethan's begging for another chance. Therapy. Transparency. The works. He's panicking about the gallery's reputation. I replied. Rachel just left my office. Seems she remembered our marriage the second Ethan dumped her. Diana responded almost immediately. Isn't it remarkable how consequences sharpen priorities? It was. The architect in me couldn't help but appreciate the structural truth of it. Pull one support beam, and suddenly the whole framework reveals exactly where it's weak. In the days after the restaurant confrontation, the ripple effect started hitting everyone involved. Friends and colleagues took sides. People I never thought would even comment suddenly had opinions. I didn't expect so many would defend Rachel. Some said I was harsh, overreacting, even vindictive. Monica, a designer I'd worked with for years, called one night. Miles, she said, I heard about what happened. With Rachel and Ethan. Don't you think the whole public scene at Café Vino was a bit too much? You'd rather I stayed quiet? Pretended it wasn't happening? I asked. No, of course not. But involving his wife, doing it so publicly, it just came off as vindictive. It's not vindictive, Monica, I said. It's called accountability. That ended the call. Another friendship damaged by the fallout. Meanwhile, the consequences piled up in every corner. Ethan's investors at the gallery called for an emergency meeting. They weren't thrilled about the PR mess. Rachel's exhibition? Postponed. Indefinitely. One of my firm's biggest clients, someone who collected her photography, quietly moved their business to another architect. No explanation. But I didn't need one. Rachel kept reaching out. Text after text. Each one more desperate than the last. Miles, please. This is destroying everything I've worked for. Can't we at least meet and talk this through like adults? But I stayed the course. Steady. Quiet. Just like I'd always been. Diana and I kept in touch. She updated me on her end. Ethan had moved into a hotel, was scrambling to save both his marriage and his business. But Diana stood firm, calm, strategic. She wasn't just walking away, she was protecting what she'd built. We met now and then for coffee. Two people who'd been blindsided, but refused to stay broken. Strange how betrayal can lead to unexpected connections. Diana and I started finding common ground, not just because we'd both been burned, but because we actually got each other. She appreciated the way I thought in lines, shapes, and purpose. And I respected her for authenticity and detail. A month after the fallout at Café Vino, she sent me a text. Ethan's gallery board asked for his resignation today. Apparently, getting personally involved with artists you represent crosses a few professional lines. Who knew? I replied. A few minutes later, she added. Rachel lost her studio lease. Landlord's wife is good friends with her assistant Tessa. Turns out Tessa had quite the story to tell. Life, it seemed, was cleaning house all on its own. Then, something I didn't expect, Caleb, the quiet guy from Rachel's studio, reached out. Said he admired my work and wanted to talk collaboration. His photography of architectural spaces was actually pretty compelling, and I happened to be working on a book about the relationship between structure and environment. It felt good, building something new from the wreckage. For the first time in a long while, the weight started lifting. I'd hit structural failure, taken stock of the damage, and now I was designing something stronger. Something real. A life rooted in integrity, not illusion. 7 months after it all unraveled, I stood in my newly redesigned living room, taking it in. Gone were the pieces Rachel had picked out to impress guests. Now, the walls featured Caleb's photographs, clean, intentional, honest. Mixed in were a few selections Diana had recommended. Up-and-coming artist with something real to say. The divorce had wrapped up fast, once Rachel realized I wasn't negotiating. Her lawyer made some noise about splitting the house, but that quieted down quickly when mine laid out the evidence of her affair and the PR nightmare it could cause her. I threw myself into the Holloway Museum project, and something changed in my work. The client even noticed. There's something different about these designs, Miles, he told me. They're bolder, more authentic. He wasn't wrong. Losing Rachel stripped away all the extras, all the fluff. What was left behind was honest work. Purposeful. Clear. That evening, my phone buzzed. Exhibition opening tonight. Still need a +1. Diana. We developed a solid friendship over the months. Casual dinners. The occasional gallery stroll. Nothing romantic. Neither of us were ready for that, but we respected each other. And that was something rare. Pick you up at 8, I texted back. Later, as we walked into the gallery, Diana pointed to a small sign near the entrance. New Management and Artistic Direction by Tessa Monroe. I raised an eyebrow. Tessa? As in? Caleb's girlfriend? Rachel's former assistant? Diana nodded, smirking a little. Apparently, she's got serious talent. Ethan's old investors were impressed. Life really does find ways to recalibrate. Speaking of recalibrating, she said, I got Rachel's wedding invite yesterday. I stopped. Wedding? That was fast. Not a Ethan, she said. Some photographer she met at a Tampa convention. I laughed. I got one too. Went straight in the recycling bin. You're not even curious? No, I said, pausing at a particularly striking photograph. That chapter's closed. And it was. Walking through that gallery, I felt it deep in my bones. The anger was gone. The bitterness, too. All that remained was distance. Perspective. Rachel didn't live in my thoughts anymore. She'd become what she truly was, a lesson. Not a scar that reopened every time her name came up. Later, over dinner, Diana raised her glass. To unexpected allies in difficult times. I clinked mine against hers. And to building something better from the foundation up. She gave me a look, thoughtful. You really have moved on, haven't you? I'm an architect, I said, smiling. When a structure fails, you don't keep standing in the rubble. You learn from it. And then, you design something stronger. Driving home that night, I thought about everything, the pain, the betrayal, the fallout. It had almost broken me. But in the end, it revealed something deeper. A strength I didn't know I had. The anger had been real. The heartbreak, too. But they didn't define me anymore. I'd redesigned my life. This time with stronger foundations, cleaner lines, and more meaningful connections. I no longer wondered what Rachel was doing, or why she did what she did. And that, I realized, was the truest sign that I'd finally moved on.